right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still talking about the Kapedo crisis. In fact, I see some of you suggesting that we should have had some of the politicians in studio. Well, that is not a very good idea because they themselves are on the spot for having either brought it up or being part of the conflict. So we don't want to seem like we are taking one side or the other. Let's see your feedback. Let's bring them up and read some of them and see what you're saying. Here, Rono Winters says Kapedo issues escalating more when the police officers uses force. The best remedy here is just dialogue spearheaded by the political leaders, elders, and church leaders of that particular area. All right, let's bring up another one. Kipkazi Kwech says beneficiaries of Kapedo's skirmishes are our political class, hiding under cultural guise to control its magnificent resources in the region. The solution lies in government presence in the region. All right. Engineer Lazaro says thinking of deployment of military in Kapedo is like responding to a mosquito bite with a hammer. Kapedo issue just needs thorough intelligence to unearth where they've been betting arms, training, and courage to engage security forces. All right. Nation says the police protected you when other bandits came for you, your family and cattle. Would you target them? If the police conducted fair disarmament between communities, would you attack them? If the police conducted operations humanely, would you see them as enemies? All right, pertinent questions there. Jacob Abere says the Kapedo crisis, insecurity, and livestock raid in this area needs a hybrid solution approach. Pacification first, then affirmative project solution by counties and national government infrastructures, and change in livestock farming. Basho Alas says there are more guns in civilian hands in Kenya than the forces combined. How will someone on an armored car fight or capture a lone gunman using a motorbike and knows the terrain even more? Kenya is a dysfunctional state where those in power care more about money than people. All right. Job Kemboy says this insecurity in Baringo County and specifically Tiati, Baringo North and South has been there from time immemorial. The government to cut source of weaponry and bolster alternative economic interventions put punitive laws to punish the financiers. Simiyu, you've heard what the people are saying there, and there's still some more of them who think intervention by the military is not a good idea. In fact, they are saying that the government should cut the supply of the weapons to the bandits.
You know, let me speak about the supply of weapons first, because this is an issue people have been talking for years, Trevor. But unfortunately, apart from now having closed the side of Uganda, we still have South Sudan, we still have Ethiopia, and supply of weapons, and Somalia through Mandera, through Elwak, Moyale, down to Marsabit. All those routes are still there, so it is not going to be easy. I think my take is this, and I'll repeat it. Yes, sometimes the police mishandle the operations. Sometimes the military mishandle the operations. But at the end of the day, Kapedo must be pacified. How do you pacify an area? There are many ways you do it. It's operational, it is software and hardware. You go with hardware to ensure criminals are apprehended. Those who exchange fire with the police, let them exchange fire with the police. Those who lose their lives by exchanging fire with the police, it will be unfortunate. Then go with the software. Just the same way I said, discuss of projects, see what you can do for them, see what you can do on the ground. The issue in Kapedo is not about infrastructure. Yes, there are poor infrastructure in Kapedo, but like I told you, the biggest problem in Kapedo is about demarcation. Where does Kapedo belong to? Does it belong to Pokot? It belongs to the Turkana. Once the government sorts out that problem, we shall see very little problems in Kapedo. Unfortunately, during the late Moise regime, was not able to do it. Kibaki was not able to do it. Now we see the current president, his term is coming to an end, he's not able to do it. Very simple. IBC, that is the job they're supposed to do. Trevor, I'm telling you, when you deal with the issue of where Kapedo belongs, and you sort it out once and for all, you will hear Kapedo go quiet. The rest are elements of we are being favored, they are being favored. We are not favored by the government. They think we are illiterate because most of us didn't go to school well. Once we sort out that, the rest will be about development, infrastructure, schooling, health, and economic activities. That will stop Kapedo.
Okay.
Politicians will not have been part of the problem. We hear, of course, we wrote a lot about it. They are financiers, they are the people who send these people to steal, but also are hearsay, so we can't put a finger on what people are telling us.
Yeah.
But yes, the government has the machinery of intelligence to ensure that whatever people are talking about should be confirmed. If it is true, then the people must pay their price.
Okay.
I hope this is not my last talk.
No, I'll give you a chance for last comments. We're just reacting to what the people are saying, and then we'll take last comments in just a bit. And Byron, there's a question here for you from Dave Major Makongiri. Says, ask Byron Adera, what about if the government deploys the special forces? The Kapedo menace has been long overdue. Will that help?
Not at all. Every intervention and responses are got to be judged against what they aim to achieve at the end of the day. I don't think at this stage the police are overwhelmed with regards to what they're able to actually do. The area is not as big, it's challenging. They need a special expertise. They may need a lot of professional approaches with regards to the way they do their jobs. Because, I mean, if you talk about what happened to the 40 plus back in 2014, if you understood how the tactics that was employed on the ground, you know, was basically cooked and put to test, then it left a lot to be desired. We got to know that there was a police commander that went with his men and ushered them into that area. A lot of these guys were police constables that are fresh from Kiganjo. Yeah. They suffered what we call lost communication because they couldn't be reached, and a lot of them died because the elements of weather just in that area, you know, starvation, and they'd been hard and they bled out, and without clear lines of support or reinforcement. These were tactical mishaps that do not need an intervention of scalable, you know, approach, be it military or special forces for that matter. That's not the kind of game that you require even the army or the special forces to get into at this point in time. The police need to, you know, pull up their socks, perhaps look at how then the people that are tasked with this special task are trained, equipped, given specific duties, are supported by other elements, let's say intelligence, and perhaps with the goodwill of the locals and the you know, administration and even the individuals themselves who they feel have been won over and are buying into a superior narrative that aims at bringing, you know, upon that populace lasting peace and security for all.
Yeah. And Madam Doni, I want to bring in an issue where I spoke to George Natembea, who's the regional commissioner for Rift Valley, on the issue around food supplies, and this is what he had to say.
Generally, Kapedo area has been food insecure, and the government has been providing food relief. Those efforts will continue if we determine that indeed there are people who are starving and they need government support. We will provide the necessary support if indeed is needed. This operation is going to take a long time. It's not like we are there for 2 or 3 days or 4 weeks. We are going to be there for as long as it takes to ensure that we get all those illicit firearms from the hands of criminals. So people who are starving can't wait for that long. I'm saying that if we identify there's a need for government to provide some sort of relief, then we'll do that.
The humanitarian crisis, Madam Mudhoni, that's what I keep talking about, because doesn't this contribute to more resentment against the forces now? He says that it's generally been a food insecure area, but we spoke to some people there who were saying we are starving here. There's no food supplies coming, there's no aid coming, all we see is boots on the ground.
I think on one hand, if you get the government on the ground, then it will be possible to provide the needs, because once you create a persistent lack for the communities, then what happens? And there is no security officers on the ground, and this is, I think, what Smith is saying. Let's have the operation on the ground. We are not talking about it to be gruesome, but pacify the situation on the ground. If we don't do this, then you will create a persistent lack for these communities. And look, most of these communities are dealing with resources that are easily convertible. Cattle is easily convertible to a gun. A few cows, you get a gun. So if you don't have the systems, then you create persistent lack. And that persistent lack then need to be a recipe for more people feeling, okay, why don't we find alternatives to survive? So I think having the security on the ground, it will be one way to reach these people. We don't know how long before the attack came. How long had they stayed without food? Because we're in a drought period.
Yeah.
So how long had they stayed without food? It's only that the attack has made this situation more public. So we need to make sure these people are provided for, primarily. And one way to have that basic need met for the communities to have, and you look at the security forces, and I think the other day President said that they are efficient. Let's use that efficiency to reach these people who we were not sure how long they have stayed without food. That efficiency will help us now see, okay, if I can get the basic, then it means the security is not about my physical being safe, it's also about my basic needs of life being satisfied. And that will create an opportunity to start seeing physical moving to the human basic needs of the communities in this area.
Yeah. Simiyu, how do we create an intervention on this humanitarian crisis that is coming up? In fact, I asked Regional Commissioner George Natembeya on this, and he said it's propaganda. But we were speaking to people down there who were saying that we are starving, there's no food aid coming, and we are being victimized by the security forces.
I think Natembeya was being dishonest. Kapedo, yes, is a food deficient area. What normally happens in this kind of situation, Trevor, is that the traders in Kapedo are normally given escorts to go and get their supplies wherever they normally get their supplies. That is one of the things we say, even when you're on the ground, there are some things that you need to do. As you are pacifying the population through the hardware, you also need to use the software. You escort traders, notwithstanding whether they have been part and parcel of this problem. You escort them to where they normally get their groceries or wherever they get their things. You escort them back to Kapedo, let them share the food or sell the food to the people. That is how operations are done, especially in the military. I don't know how the police does it, and my friend there can bear me out. So that is one way we do it. You bring them together. You say, like, twice in a week, we shall be escorting you to go and get your groceries or your supplies. You come back to Kapedo, let people continue buying the way they were buying or share the way they were sharing. That is what we expect the government to do. Not to say that the government will give free food. Those people are not asking free food from the government. They are telling them we need to get our supplies.
Yeah.
And that is what the government needs to do. That is the answer to that question.
Okay. Now it's time to take the closing remarks, and I'll start with you, Byron. What is the way forward for this? How can this be sorted out once and for all?
If we were to be very honest with each other with regards to where we are, then we have to look very deep in history and sharing the plight of each and every one in this country.
Right.
Be it the people of Kapedo, be it
Byron, hold on for a bit. I think I have a challenge with your sound. I'll come to you for closing remarks in a bit. But Mudhoni, I'll start with you. Where do we go from here? Based on your research, what do you think were some of the solutions? Did they give you solutions themselves, by the way, when you're speaking to them? What did they say are possible solutions to this issue?
I think one of the solutions from these communities is one, deal with the situation of marginalization, where majority of these people, they feel like we are here and there's another system on this side.
Yeah.
So we need to deal with the structural violence, because once we have operations, we have silenced the gun, but there are structural systems that constantly allows the violence to recur. So we need to deal with the structural violence systems that are generating this conflict.
Yeah.
Then number two, I think the other thing was who has the monopoly of violence?
Yeah.
So for some of this community, the argument was, is that really government is completely absent, or is it that there is a malfunctioning in terms of government exercising its monopoly of violence? And one question that some people kept asking is, how did these guns end up in the hands of these people when we can see police around? So in this case, the second recommendation was that let government be the institution that has the monopoly of violence. Let's see them the presence. And then number 3, there was concern of response that are geared towards strategic interest, that we go in because there's a specific strategic national interest in that specific area, because it means we are driven by that strategic interest. So in this case, we need to go not because there's a strategic interest, but there's a need for the entire community that flows to the government. And I think the fourth recommendation from the communities in this area was, when you look at the social amenities, predominantly we see the churches, we see the non-state agencies as the primary providers, appearing like they're performing the state.
Yeah.
So, and since there's a weak presence, so their recommendation was, let the government partner with this existing system, because they're already there. Like now the schools of Kapedo, who are we likely to see going quickly to reconstruct? It probably would be the churches and very little presence of the state. So the argument is, let's have all these agencies partner. Let's have the security be part of constructing our schools together with us, because now we become part of. Let the government also be seen together with the churches, because churches and these non-state agencies that have been operating, they appear like the performing state. But let's bring government in this reconstruction, in the provision of water. Let's not only see the NGO, let's also see the government is part of this. So that way you're creating a conversation that goes beyond a long-term conversation in terms of how do we get to sustainable peace and security in this area.
All right. Byron, you're making a point before.
Yes, absolutely. So I was saying in terms of looking at long-term, peace or lasting peace for that matter in Kapedo, it's a reflection on what we need to do, as a society as a whole. Collaborative approaches have been shown to give better results at the end of the day with regards to looking at the whole, grand picture of what is presented in terms of symptoms like banditry, in terms of insecurities in one or two places in this country. The government basically in place has the monopoly of, and security is not a devolved function as is now. So the buck really just stops with the government, and security has got to be accompanied by its bedmates. And the bedmates that I see here as fitting ones is dialogue and infrastructural development in that area, just so that people have a feeling that they're part and parcel of the country. You hear the going joke where people in some of these far-flung areas talk about Nairobi as being part of Kenya, so they don't feel part and parcel. So that presence does not just need to be punitive as they see it when crises happen and they see individuals from disciplined forces going in to sort those problems out and then pull out. Permanent presence could be a way of looking at pacification of Kapedo. As I said, some of these areas with the harsh terrain are very favorable trainings. And I know for certain that the army and elements of the police forces have had a bit of presence there. If you have permanent presence there of, say, an army unit that has a permanent detachment, as we call it, in there, a lot of other interventions, perhaps a lot of other good feeling from even scholars like Ms. Mudhoni here, would have a good feeling when they go down to do their scholarly work, study, do research, which may be beneficial at the end of the day with coming out with lasting solutions in terms of the soft approaches that we're talking about. In terms of risk competition, we know non-aggressive approaches score very high as opposed to aggressive approaches that may be fraught with other outcomes which may sometimes not engender the fullness of happiness with regards to the way the solutions are fed into that equation. So think through the grand picture with regards to infrastructural development, presence of the government, and then bring in stakeholders that can hash out solutions that may be lasting, long-lasting, beyond just security operations, which may not succeed in giving life and livelihoods to the individuals who are lacking in basic needs.
Okay.
Yes.
Trevor, maybe
Yeah.
I can say one thing. I think we also need a sensitization for our counties.
Okay.
They appear like their perception, they are competing neighbors. So we want this resource, and especially those cuts across neighbors. We need to see the National Peace and Conflict Management Office. We need to see, let's not treat we are competitors. I want this resource for the greater, it's the whole county system is for the greater of Kenya,
Yeah.
not as competing neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we need a conversation from those on the ground, especially from the National Peace and Conflict Management Office.
All right. All right, Simiyu, I'll come to you, and there's a, there's a special shout out here from Captain Jonah Mukoma. He says he used to be stick buddies flying for choppers in the military. He says, Salimia Simiyu, as you make your closing remark.
Asante sana. Now, Trevor, I want to be small and big. One, what we've been having on the ground has not worked. And like they say, only fools do the same things, many times expecting the same results.
Yeah.
The government must come up with something different from what they need to do on the ground. We've given them suggestions, they don't like listening,
Yeah.
but that is our duty to shout. Number two, I want to advise Dr. Matiang'i. I wish I could tell him quietly. Matiang'i, it is not wise, but I think this is what you need to do. Establish your parallel system of information gathering so that you get information directly from the ground to your office. Because I think there's a problem you are having as a Minister for Interior.
Yeah.
You have chiefs on the ground, you have assistant chiefs on the ground, and we don't seem to be able to solve these problems. If they cannot work with the government to give them the necessary information, the necessary intelligence that they're supposed to do, then why are we paying them as taxpayers? So please look at other means you will use
Yeah.
to get to the bottom, to understand what the problem is in Kapedo, and work based on that. Number two, I want to suggest to him that probably once he has made his policy statement as the Minister for Interior, let him give the independence to the police who are doing the operations to come up with their own operational plans, operational systems, so that they go on the ground and do their work in accordance to the Constitution, so that they are not seen to be doing things and looking back to see what the political or the executive leaders are looking at them.
Okay.
Then lastly, Trevor,
Yeah.
like we said, go in with the stick and the carrots.
Yeah.
Deal with the perpetrators, but ensure that the people of Kapedo are also being taken care of. They're all Kenyans, they're paying tax, but we cannot allow them to bring insecurity in the country because of boundary issues. When we were on the ground, we were told that issues of gas, I don't know, oil, and that is why they are talking about boundaries, because once the boundaries are demarcated,
Yeah.
either the gas and the oil will go to either Baringo or to Turkana, and that was an issue. The government must stamp itself down, their foot down, and say this is how we are going to deal with the Kapedo problem,
Yeah.
and they need to deal with it once and for all.
All right.
Then finally,
Yes.
there's a program I know that was meant to be working with the government, and they were meant to be looking for finances from big donors in the world. Somehow the Ministry of Interior has refused to work with this program. It is called the Anti-Cattle Rustling Program. This program has been in abeyance since 2016. They were not asking for money from the government. They were just partnering with the government and look for funds to go and deal with the issue of cattle rustling in the best method, modern way that we know can work.
Yeah.
I've never understood, Trevor, that why some people do not want to make the government work, and yet this was a program that, to me, I've gone through it, and I'm actually now part of it. They've asked me to be part of it.
Yeah.
And I think this could be a solution to some of the problems we are going through.
Okay.
Why the government does not want to work with people who are not even asking a cent from them,
Yeah.
but they want to assist the country, I do not understand. So, Mr. Matiangi, Daktari, please work with the people.
Yeah.
Listen to people who could be having better ideas on the ground, put them together, work as a government, and let's settle these problems once and for all.
All right. Thank you so much, Simiyu Werunga, President, Advisory Council of Geneva Center for Africa's Security and Strategic Studies, live from Geneva. Anna Mudhoni Masharia, Lecturer, School of Security and Peace Studies, Kenyatta University. And Byron Adera, ex-Kenya Special Forces Officer and also Security Consultant. Thank you so much for making time. That is it for this discussion. We're taking a quick break, or do we go straight up to workout? I see Mukami Wambora is here. She's looking too good to be working out. I'm not sure if she'll work out. Paula Bosire is also here with Nutrition Myths. And Jeremy Maraga is going to work out in just a bit. All right? Bye for now.